Hello everyone, it's Mallory here with All About Cats, and in this week's video we're going to be looking at our top 10 recommendations for the best cat food on the market. So I think one of the biggest areas of frustration and confusion for cat guardians is finding the right food for their cat. This can go on for years. You can find yourself switching to new foods, looking for new foods for the entirety of your cat's life. It's a really complex area and there's a lot to learn about. The intention of this video is to give you a little bit more confidence when searching for your cat's food and also to give you a few specific recommendations that you can use when searching for a food for your cat. Now we've made a few other videos diving into specific categories like the best wet food, the best dry food, best kitten food, best budget-friendly food. But this video is going to be taking a look at cat food in general with recommendations from several different categories, including dry, wet, and fresh and raw options. So you're going to see a pretty broad variety of foods here, and there should be something here for just about everyone. If you have a specific issue that you're really focused on, you can use the video navigation below in order to jump to a recommendation that will suit your needs. You can also find a lot more recommendations on our website, so be sure to check out the link in the description to visit allaboutcats.com. With all that being said, let's jump into our top 10 recommendations for the best cat food you can buy. So my number one recommendation is going to be Feline Naturals canned cat food. After having looked at over 80 different cat food brands, hundreds of recipes, many of which were canned recipes, I found that Feline Natural really does stand out. So they're doing a few things differently from the competition. One, this is a New Zealand brand, and New Zealand cat food brands are doing a few things differently from foods made elsewhere around the world. It's not a guarantee of quality, but New Zealand produced foods do tend to use somewhat higher quality ingredients and be held to somewhat higher standards than foods made elsewhere. Feline Naturals canned foods are made primarily with clearly named muscle meat, organs, and bones, so they're not containing a hodgepodge of nameless meats and animal byproducts. You know exactly, for the most part, what is going into this food. And they're also interesting in what they don't contain. So Feline Naturals canned foods don't contain any artificial colors or flavors, which are things that a lot of people want to avoid. And pretty interestingly, they also don't contain those thickening gums that you're going to see in a lot of other cat foods. Now, the biggest downsides of Feline Natural are palatability and price. So my cats are not huge fans of Feline Natural food. They'll eat it, but they're not really enthusiastic about it. And this seems to be a trend in the customer reviews that I've seen. A lot of cats do like this food, but it can be hit or miss. Secondly, Feline Natural food is going to be pretty expensive. So at about 73 cents per ounce, this is one of the most expensive canned foods on the market. And it could certainly add up to being quite pricey over time. My second recommendation is pretty similar to Feline Natural. It is Ziwi Peak's canned cat food. Again, this is a New Zealand brand, so you're getting relatively high quality, free range ingredients. You're getting the promise of superior safety and quality standards. And you're also getting a food that comes from a company that's never been involved in a recall and seems to have a pretty good history of producing high quality and trustworthy products. Of course, anything could happen and there's no guarantee that this is a perfect brand, but it does seem to have a pretty good reputation. Now, Ziwi Peak foods are available in a variety of recipes, but they're all very high in animal-derived ingredients containing a nice diverse array of muscle meat and organs, along with New Zealand green-lipped mussel, which is a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. And similarly to Feline Natural, it doesn't contain those thickening gums that you're going to see in so many other canned foods. That being said, they do contain chickpeas as sort of a binding agent or stabilizer, and this bumps up the carbohydrate content of these foods. Besides the chickpea issue, the biggest downside of Ziwi Peak is its price at about 74 cents per ounce. Ziwi Peak is certainly one of the most expensive canned food brands on the market. But don't worry, we do have some recommendations if you're looking for something more budget friendly. If your top priority is getting an affordable food, I would recommend Authority's Pate cat foods. In particular, I really like their chicken pate recipe. It's an economical food at about 16 cents per ounce, comparable to Fancy Feast, and it's doing a lot of things differently than other budget-friendly foods. So Authority recipes are made without animal byproducts, so while animal byproducts aren't necessarily bad, you are getting the promise of potentially higher ingredient quality, potentially higher protein bioavailability. And the foods are also made without artificial colors, which are potentially problematic. Now, the foods do contain brewer's rice, which bumps up the carbohydrate content just a little bit, but overall they still are able to maintain a nice species-appropriate macronutrient distribution with plenty of protein, moderate levels of fat, and low levels of carbohydrates. So again, if budget is your top priority, I would recommend considering Authority's canned cat food, specifically their pate recipes, as the flaked and shredded recipes tend to be a bit higher in carbohydrates. If, on the other hand, you're willing to spend quite a bit on your cat food, you might want to consider Nom Nom's Chicken Cuisine. So Nom Nom is quite a bit different from the other brands on this list. So you're going to go to the Nom Nom website and fill out this questionnaire about your cat, and then they will develop a meal plan for your cat. So all of the meals are custom portioned for your cat's calorie needs, and then they're shipped out to your house according to a custom schedule. So overall, this is a customized experience that delivers a somewhat higher quality food as well. So Nom Nom foods are made from human quality ingredients, and they're cooked a little bit differently than a typical cat food. So this food looks just like table scraps or a kind of chicken that you might eat for yourself. It has a very soft, flaky consistency that I find my cats absolutely love. Additionally, the foods seem to have a pretty good nutrient balance, so they're rich in protein with moderate levels of fat and pretty low carbohydrate content. So overall, if you're looking for customized, top quality food delivered to your home, then I would consider Nom Nom. The biggest downsides of it are, of course, the fact that it is a subscription, so you're going to have to get those regular deliveries. You can cancel at any time, but I still find this to be a little bit frustrating at times. And then secondly, I've had some issues with fulfillment. Sometimes my deliveries haven't shown up, or they've shown up with issues like the food was spoiled. Perhaps this was a temporary issue that's been resolved. But I've heard some other reports from customers who have experienced something similar. So that's also something to consider, that this is kind of a newer brand. They're doing something kind of different. And that means that it seems to be a less consistent and reliable option than most of the other recommendations here. So our next recommendation is going to be a good option if you want to feed your cat a dry food. So if dry cat food is your preference, then I would recommend Dr. Elsey's Clean Protein. This brand is doing some things very differently from the dry cat food competition. So a typical dry cat food will contain either legumes or cereal grains, something that is starchy and can hold the kibble together. It's a little bit like baking a cookie. But it is possible to make something like a cookie that is not high in starch. And that's what Dr. Elsey's is doing. Instead of using those starchy ingredients, they're using gelatin in order to bind the kibble. So it's a kibble with a texture very, very similar to any traditional kibble, but with really low carbohydrate content. Using this ingredient allows the company to not only give a really low carbohydrate food, but a really meat-rich food. So Dr. Elsey's Clean Protein food offers plenty of the protein that your cat needs. And as the name suggests, it also appears to be a very bioavailable source of protein. It's going to be really easy for your cat's body to process. Dr. Elsey's Clean Protein is available in a couple of different recipes, and it's certainly worth a try if you're looking for a really top-notch dry cat food. The biggest downside of Dr. Elsey's Clean Protein is that it's relatively expensive. It's still pretty cheap. You're going to probably end up feeding your cat about 2 ounces per day, so maybe 86 cents per day. So that's a bit higher than a typical dry food, but again, way, way cheaper than a typical canned food. Even the most economical canned foods are typically going to cost a little bit more than that. Now, if you are looking for dry food and you don't want to spend a lot, my top budget dry food recommendation would be Kirkland Signature's Daily Maintenance Food. Now, this food isn't perfect. It's like most dry foods, pretty high in carbohydrates, and it's overall not the most species appropriate choice. That being said, it does have some qualities that set it apart from other very economical products, which are clearly named ingredients, the absence of some artificial colors that you might see in other dry foods, and the inclusion of prebiotics and probiotics, which could potentially improve digestive health. Aside from the carbohydrate issue, my biggest concern with this food would be that it appears to be manufactured by Diamond Pet Foods. We talk a bit about Diamond Pet Foods in our review of Taste of the Wild. It does seem to be a manufacturer with a history of recalls, and there have been some concerns about the safety of foods manufactured by this company. So that would be my biggest qualm when considering Kirkland cat food. But at 7 cents per ounce, this does appear to be one of the best low-cost dry cat foods on the market. Our next recommendation is going to be a good one to consider if you have a cat with sensitive digestion. If you have a cat who, for some reason, is dealing with these types of sensitivities, very, very often a highly digestible and simple diet is at least a part of the solution. If you are in that situation, I would recommend Hound and Gatos canned cat food. So this brand specializes in what they call a Paleolithic diet for pets, and their canned foods are available in a wide variety of recipes, all of which follow a very similar blueprint. So they contain muscle meat or muscle meat and organs, along with salmon oil and guar gum as a thickener. And then, of course, they're fortified with all the synthetic amino acids, vitamins, and minerals that are needed to make the food nutritionally complete. Because the foods have such incredibly simple ingredient lists, they tend to be really easy to digest, and they can be a really good option for, again, cats who have some digestive sensitivities. So whether you're choosing one of their recipes with just one protein source or multiple protein sources, they're typically going to be pretty easy to digest and for your cat's body to handle. Because they're so simple, they're also really low in carbohydrates. They don't contain a lot of plant ingredients. And they can be a good option for cats with diabetes or really just anyone who's trying to avoid high carbohydrate foods for their cat. Like so many of the other recommendations here, the biggest downsides of this food are price. So at 43 cents per ounce, it's a little bit more expensive than your typical canned cat food. And Hound and Gatos food also tends to get kind of mixed reviews when it comes to palatability. My cats are not really big fans of this food. I've tried several recipes on them, and they're just never really all that enthusiastic about it. I think maybe there's something about the texture that doesn't really appeal to them. And I've seen similar reports in customer reviews. Of course, not all cats dislike Hound and Gatos. Some cats absolutely love it. But I've noticed that compared to some other foods, the palatability ratings are not quite so high. Our next recommendation is labeled as the best cat food for urinary tract health. I also think that it's going to be a good option if you want to help your cat lose weight. So it is Tiki Cat's Luau line. So these are very moisture-rich, shredded foods set in broth. They contain chicken and or fish, and they are very low fat, low calorie foods that deliver plenty of moisture and plenty of protein without a lot of fluff. Now, again, while this food does deliver the moisture and seems to have a species-appropriate pH level and seems to overall be the kind of food that can help to support a healthy urinary tract, it's not a prescription diet and it's not intended to treat any condition. Overall, it's just a good option if you're looking for a high-moisture, low-calorie food for your cat. The biggest concerns with this food are that, one, it's pretty low in fiber. It doesn't contain any fiber additives. My other concern is that it's kind of low in fat. And then thirdly, it can get to be pretty expensive. At 54 cents per ounce, it's not the most expensive on a per ounce basis on this list, but because it's so low in calories, you're going to feed your cat more of it. And so it can get to be quite pricey. My second to last recommendation is going to be the best raw cat food. It's really a freeze-dried raw food. So this food has undergone a low-heat processing method that destroys any pathogens while allowing the food to retain its nutrient value. So essentially, this has all of the nutritional merits of a raw diet. So Stella and Chewy's offers a nice selection of freeze-dried dinner morsels, which are little morsels of freeze-dried raw cat food that you're going to rehydrate in warm water and serve to your cat. So these foods are made with muscle meat, organs, and bones. They also contain added probiotics to potentially support digestive health and overall well-being. And with plenty of animal-derived protein, moderate levels of animal-derived fat, and very low levels of carbohydrate matter. These are pretty species-appropriate products. I've used a few different Stella and Chewy's recipes, and they seem to be quite appetizing, and I know that other customers agree that they're really appealing foods that cats seem to like quite a bit. These foods can be a great option if you're looking for something highly digestible, especially if your cat has some food sensitivities. These can be a really good option. At $3.75, this food does look pretty expensive on a per ounce basis, but because your cat is going to be eating less of it, it adds up to being pretty comparable on a day-by-day basis to feeding one of the more expensive canned cat foods here. So it's not really that expensive of an option, especially if you're purchasing one of their cheaper recipes like the chicken dinner morsels. And finally, we need to have a recommendation for kittens. So if you have a kitten, you're of course going to want to look for a recipe that is formulated for growth and reproduction or all life stages. Our top recommendation is Wellness Core's Kitten Pate. So this is a very smooth pate that's primarily made from clearly named muscle meat and organs. So you're giving your kitten a nice species appropriate diet without a lot of carbohydrates or other ingredients that could potentially lead to health issues later. This food does contain some plant ingredients that don't seem like they're quite necessary. So it does seem like it's a little bit on the fluffier side, like it's including some ingredients that look good, but aren't necessarily nutritious for your cat. But overall, it does seem to be a pretty species-appropriate option for kittens. At 60 cents per ounce, this food is a bit on the expensive side, so you can certainly find some more budget-friendly options for kittens in our video on the best cat food for kittens. So I think that about covers it for our list of the best cat food you can buy. In summary, you're going to want to look for foods that meet AAFCO or American Association of Feed Control officials guidelines for your cat's life stage. So whether that's growth and reproduction, all life stages, or adult maintenance, you're going to want to make sure that the food meets those basic guidelines and are nutritionally complete and balanced for your cat. And then beyond that, you're going to want to think about the food's macronutrient distribution. Ideally, you want to look for food that's pretty rich in protein, ideally animal-derived protein. Moderate levels of fat are good. So again, you're looking for animal-derived fat if you can. So things like salmon oil, chicken fat, beef fat. And then you're going to want to look for foods that are lower in carbohydrates. So I would scan the ingredient list and avoid foods that contain a lot of potatoes, grains, legumes. All of these ingredients tend to bump up the food's carbohydrate content. And then beyond that, you can think about protein digestibility, looking for higher quality proteins, clearly named meats, potentially avoiding plant-derived protein. You're overall looking for a food that honors your cat's needs as a carnivore. And then once you've gotten nutrition out of the way, I would think about the company that's making the food. Is it a reputable company? Have they been involved in a lot of recalls? You want to get food from a company you can trust. You also want to look at customer reviews to determine if the food seems to be a hit with cats or not. This can give you some insights into how your cat might respond to the food, but I wouldn't worry too much about what other people's cats think of the food. If you would like more information on how to choose the best cat food, as well as more details on all of our top 10 recommendations, check out the link in the description for the written version of this guide. While you're in the description, you'll also find links to all of the products mentioned here so that you can check them out for yourself. You'll also find a link to sign up for our free recall alert program, which will allow you to get the news every time there's a new recall on a cat food in the United States. It's a really good way to stay informed and help to keep your cat safe. I hope that you found this helpful. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in more videos like this one, please subscribe to the All About Cats channel for more buyer's guides, cat product reviews, and information on all things cats. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!